Hi, I'm just going to give a bit of a preamble to this video. Please excuse my voice. I'm feeling a bit under the weather, so I'm going to give this a crack anyway. Um, this is the first time I've recorded one of these videos with my grandparents, Sue and Geoff. I wanted to try and do this to capture some of the knowledge and the experience that people born in the earlier half of the 20th century have sort of lived through and the experiences that they have and what they've seen. Hopefully that's better. So, because of that, not everything really went to plan when we started doing this. On the first night, we had everything set up. We had a couple of video cameras, webcams connected to the computer with a couple of microphones, and the videos went perfectly. Sat down for about an hour, had a bit of a yarn. It was great, except the microphones caught up on basically nothing. Which meant that was pretty much unusable. Even though the video was great, it didn't match up with anything with the audio that we took on the second night. So when changed over my microphones, we got into it on the second night. And unfortunately, the opposite thing happened. Audio worked pretty well. Video, non-existent. Didn't happen at all. Not sure why. But we do have the audio, which was great. With one minor exception, we had two microphones and we had three people chatting, which meant that Nan and Gramps their audio is pretty reasonable, but the questions and stuff that I'm giving them, the prompts that I'm giving them, are a little hard to hear. So feel free to turn that up. But thanks for bearing with me. As a result of having no video, then managed to get together quite a bit of photos for a bit of a slideshow, and that was working out pretty well. So we actually started editing the photos over the top of the audio, so that way everything synced up well together. So as Nan was talking about her history and her family, everything was matched up really with the photos that you were seeing a lot of the time. Then my computer started crashing, and I had too many photos all trying to happen at once, and my computer just couldn't handle it. So I actually pretty much abandoned this for quite some time because every time I opened up the software, it just crashed. Couldn't get back to where I was. So instead, what I've done is from that point onwards, and you'll see the point when it changes in the video. I have put in just a generic slideshow. I've tried to match up sort of timeframes and themes, so you'll see that a little bit, but thanks for bearing with me. It is the first time. Since then, I did do another recording with Chrissy's granddad, and the audio and video went quite well, but just looking to improve over time. So this is something that I would like to continue doing. I appreciate whoever's watching this. Thanks for having a watch. If you know somebody who you think there's quite a few life experiences, like they've got stuff that they like to share, have a few good stories, I'd love to sit down and have a chat with them. I think that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. This is really just, it's mainly for me. It's a big cherished memory for me, but hopefully, family and friends would also like to have this as something they can look back on and sort of watch and get to know their family, just all friends, a little bit better. So please enjoy, and thanks for getting through this first bit.
So, we'll go through both of you because we'll try and do this as one go. We're going to try and stick to less than an hour. So we got 50 minutes.
Okay.
All right, we'll stop at 8:30. So, we're going to get a summary. I'll ask you both individually. We'll keep it reasonably short because we're going to get onto the topic content. Okay? So, Nan, I'll go you first. So, upbringing-wise, family constellation. So, whereabouts do you sit within your family? And, we'll go with that. Like what's...
I'm the fourth child who was born to my parents.
Yep.
So I've got a sister 7 years older. I had a brother 6 years older. He passed away in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Then I had a sister who passed away when she was 2.5, which was about 8 months before I was born. Then I have a brother who's 3 years younger, and then I have an adopted brother who's 8 years younger.
Okay. So, crack.
Hmm.
And your mum and dad, what did they do growing up?
My mum grew up on a dairy farm. Was actually her grandparents' dairy farm that her parents took over on the death of her grandparents.
Mm-hmm. So third generation dairy farmer.
They're actually fifth generation all up, apparently.
So very much you pass that on to your kids. Yep.
Yeah. So then my parents met each other when they were actually children, and then when my mum's two brothers went to war, my dad left his job in Newcastle. He worked as an electrician with a big company in Newcastle. He left his job, my mum left her job where she was a bookkeeper, and they went and ran the farm with my grandparents because so they bought a news agency there. Then they sold that they moved back to Newcastle, and my dad looked after the horses that used to go down the mine.
Who had the news agency?
My parents.
Okay, yes, they own the news agency.
The guy in town wanted them to have it. He was retiring. They didn't have the money, but he what do you call it? Vendor. He supplied the finance.
Oh,
the
like a guarantor sort of thing?
Yeah, the guy that was selling it, he financed them. So he allowed them to basically pay it off.
Oh, so like a rent to buy sort of situation?
Yeah, sort of thing. It's an owner, what do they call it? It's got a special name. Anyway, that's what they did. He even loaned them the money to put in the till. They didn't even, because they'd both given up their jobs, they didn't really get pay from the job of running. They did the milk run with horse and cart.
Mm-hmm.
And then they left Newcastle and went down to Thirroul near Wollongong, and they had a milk run that went up Bulli Pass and around South Thirroul, and then they sold that. We lived with my mum's parents while we lived in a garage on their property, and then they bought a dairy. They bought a farm, a parcel of land at Exeter, and they built the shedding for the dairy, and they got cows, and we had air shears, and we had
So the dairy farm that you somewhat grew up on was not the dairy farm that was passed down through generations?
No, because it was a typical thing. The two boys that went to war,
they would have gotten
they got the whole thing.
Yeah. Oh, so they come back from war?
They both come back from war,
okay,
and they both got the family farm.
Yeah, yeah.
Mum and Dad got nothing. Yeah, they got nothing. So they actually was Mum and her younger brother, because she had three brothers. Mum and her younger brother were to get a parcel of land that adjoined the farm.
Okay, yeah.
But they didn't.
And there's still some sort of, it's like a passed down sort of thing. So it's not necessarily, that's an older sort of thing as well, isn't it? Like you pass it on to the firstborn rather than spreading it out to everybody. Not necessarily the firstborn. Like
I think because the two boys went to war, that was why they got the farm.
Okay.
And
not
then,
fair,
but
you know, like
it happened, and that's the way it was. So then Mum and Dad sold the milk run, and bought the 90 acres in Exeter, and started a dairy on there. It was just an old house, very old house.
How long have they been doing the dairy before the kids come along? Before like your older sister?
Oh no, my David, Kerry and Lynn, the first three children, were born in Helensburgh when they had the news agency.
Okay,
and then they moved to Belmont, which is a suburb of Newcastle.
Yep.
And I was born in Newcastle Hospital. Paul was born in Belmont.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was 3 when they moved to Thirroul, and then I was 6, I think, when they moved to Exeter. Okay. So they had all their children.
Done a bit of moving around within your first few years of life. And if you were 6 by the time you got to Exeter...
I'd only moved twice.
Yeah, no, but if you were 6 by the time you got there, David and Kerry would have been, what, like 12?
12.
13?
12, 11 and 12. Yeah.
So
12 and 13 something.
So occupation-wise, mum was a dairy farmer as such in the way like she was working the farm.
Always.
Always working the farm. Yeah.
Always.
And then your dad was.
Well, he was an electrician by trade.
Yeah. But once he got to Exeter.
Once he got to Exeter, he was just a dairy. He did
sort
dairy.
of gave up his trade as such.
He never ever went back to his trade.
Yeah.
But he then became he became president of the local Dairy Farmers Association.
Yeah.
Was very involved politically, not with a political party, but politically with the things that were happening to the dairying industry through legislation.
Okay, yeah.
So he was very vocal, and he was very much an advocate. Very much so.
So he's quite outspoken in his opinions and stuff.
Yeah, and then there was an organisation called the Christian Businessmen's Committee.
Okay.
So it was an interdenominational, and he was the New South Wales chairman for about 25 years.
Jesus, that's a fair crack. Nice. All right. So we'll go Grant. Your family constellation.
Okay, I'm a middle child, older brother, and a younger brother.
Mm-hmm.
The older brother's 3 years older, and the younger brother's 4 years older. Younger.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. You'll get it.
I was going to say it's a good spot on the couch there.
You're getting a bit mellow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What's the next question?
It's all right. We'll smash through them so that way it's a bit quicker. So, brought up, what'd your parents do for work?
My dad was a builder, a bricklayer, mainly. He actually worked with my mum's parents for quite a while, and he was a painter.
Mm-hmm.
So, but eventually he went on to work out at the abattoirs as the maintenance and construction worker out there. I got a feeling my mum worked at the refreshment rooms on the railway at Mossvale before they were married, or
In Dormy House?
and Dormy House. Yeah,
Cool.
she worked there for a while.
What's Dormy House?
It was it wasn't a resort, but it was a holiday sort of.
It's a big place on the golf course in Mossvale.
Mm.
And it was
like a
boarding house type.
boarding. Okay.
You went away, and it was
Not like
holiday
country
accommodation.
Like country club, if it was on a golf
No,
course, not like
no.
a country club. Okay.
No,
Okay.
no, it was just a holiday,
Okay.
holiday resort sort of thing.
Like
It was
what we have.
upmarket.
Yeah. So like there's some major resort sort of thing. Like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she did that. She did it. She managed. Excuse me. She managed the a factory up in town where they had a lot of the materials would come in, and they'd have floors in them, and they actually fixed it. Very fine detail stuff that had to happen to fix those floors. But she managed all the goings on there.
Okay. Is that like in terms of fabric, like dresses and stuff that were made? Like, is it like dressmaking, or is
Yeah.
it like fixing the fabric?
all the materials that got used
All
to
fabric
do dressmaking.
materials,
Okay. Yeah. So fixing
Clothes,
them before
suits.
they were turned into something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's that like an imperfection on the loom or something like that. Okay. Yep. Okay,
So
makes
she
sense.
did that.
Plus,
And knitted very well. She used to. Yeah, she used to be able to just rearrange patterns and adapt it to the right size. She'll have a little pattern, she can make it into a big pattern. She wasn't very
confident in herself.
confident, but when it came to knitting, she could really work the patterns out.
The mathematics involved in some of the things that she made with the pattern. The patterns were so intricate, so the mathematics involved in changing that from a baby's layette to a woman's top was phenomenal. And yet,
is that something where she could do it implicitly, but she'd not be able to tell you how she does it, or is she very much like you need to, if this is
Oh,
one every 4,
yeah, I
you
don't-
need to make it one every 16 or something like that?
I don't think she'd explain it to you. She would just do it. And quite often she'd have it 3/4 knitted and she'd pull 2/3 of it apart because she's found something down the bottom that just
She would
wasn't
pull the
sit
whole
right.
thing apart to redo it.
Yeah.
Very
So very
perfectionist in what she did.
perfectionist and
Yeah.
detail
Mm.
oriented.
She actually used to spin some of the alpaca
Wool.
wool that came in.
Okay,
and
and
then-
that's gone from the fleece into the.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I haven't seen that. Like in terms.
She
of
was phenomenal.
Like on a wheel, or
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, that's,
And
Yeah.
and when her hand knitting was as good as a machine knitting.
Mm.
It was so even
uniform. Yeah.
Yeah.
and
tightly
she-
done,
yeah,
I'd assume. as
well, yeah, some of the things were looser because of the design of them, but the alpaca place in Berrima was a very exclusive sort of. They had an alpaca farm when it was a very, very
Weird, like yeah,
new
sort
thing.
of, yeah, like
People
a
didn't have it.
niche sort of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they'd shaved their alpacas, and like Gramp said, she would spin the wool, but to knit that wool was like phenomenal. It was like cobwebs, and then she would get nothing compared
Next
to
to
what
nothing,
they
yeah.
would.
Yeah, so she
They
would get
would-
independence, and that she would make for them, and they would sell it for their.
Oh yeah,
profit.
big
Okay.
big profit.
Hundreds of dollars.
Back in
$100,
the
that's huge.
absolutely, yeah.
From what you told me in terms of the house and stuff, that's yeah. I'll get onto the house. Okay, so so parents' occupations, we've got a bit of that down. Life journey wise, I'll probably start just schooling, just very basic, like where you went to your first lot of schooling. So
Okay.
parents, what's
Yep. Moss Vale Central, which was started at kindergarten and went right through to what they called year 3 or leaving,
Intermediate, yeah.
and then it turned into intermediate, and that was converted to year 3, and then leaving was year 5.
Fifth form, not year 5. Yeah.
Well,
Third
it was.
form and
Yeah,
fifth
it's like
form.
the
Well, it
equivalent.
used to be. It wasn't form. It was years when we were at the central school. It was forms when we got up to the high school.
Okay.
Changed to first form, second form,
Okay. Yeah.
through to sixth form.
And then you were 6 when you moved to Exeter.
So I started my schooling, kindergarten at the Rural,
the rule, yeah.
and then I went to Exeter.
Mm-hmm.
And then from Exeter I went to Moss Vale High School.
So, Moss Vale High from Exeter, what's the distance? Like, you were still living in Exeter, or were you living in?
Moss Vale was the catchment for our area.
Yeah.
So you couldn't go past Moss Vale, say, to go to Barrel.
Okay, yeah. So, but that was sort of like the Exeter school. There wasn't a high school in Exeter. You had to
No,
go
no,
to
no.
Moss Vale to go to the high
It
school.
was a 2-room public school in
Yeah.
Exeter, so 5 kids in my class.
Yeah, I went to the what's out past not Wingello. Yeah, Wingello. The Wingello public school has got like 30 kids for the whole school. So
Yeah, well, that was a similar thing with us.
Yeah. So, in terms of I'll probably go past general schooling to post-school occupation. Like, so what sort of occupation did either of you follow or have intentions to follow?
Well, it was actually my mum found me a job as a carpet layer with Noel Watson in the arcade at Moss Vale.
She worked upstairs.
That's where she worked upstairs in the material shop.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it just sort of fell that way. It wasn't that I really wanted to be a carpet layer, but my dad said it was great to get an apprenticeship,
Yeah.
and that was being offered. So
We still get like caddy. Like that was very much the same thing with him in terms of I think he started off as a baker, and he is not a baker, but same idea. He was very much told by his dad that getting a trade, at least you got your apprenticeship behind you, and so started with a carpet layer.
yeah,
Did that for how many years?
probably 20 years on and off. I never really gave it away, but I worked out at Blue Circle for a number of years.
Yeah.
but part-time,
Yeah. Blue
Like we did.
Circle was the concrete? No,
yeah,
concrete.
cement.
Was
Cement.
it, and it was in the office. It wasn't in the yard.
Oh, so you weren't like a concreter. You were
No.
like a
No,
surgeon,
I was-
you were working
I
on
was a
Payroll.
bean counter.
like bean count. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I worked in payroll to start with.
Yeah.
With Sue's brother Paul, he was out there, and I then moved into the costing department.
So yeah, you had a mind for numbers.
Well, yeah, I think so.
Always.
Yeah.
You gravitated towards that. Of the
Well,
options.
yeah. When I got into it, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Okay. Well, that's the big
Yeah.
thing. Like sometimes people are good at things, but
Yeah.
like actually enjoying something which numbers don't.
Yeah, so while I was in the costing department, I told my boss to shove his job. Went back to carpet laying for bunters in Mittagong.
Let's record that.
When he was 36,
Yeah.
that's when he had the asthma attack, and he was told he was never to carpet lay again.
So 36 asthma attack. Asthma attack. That was the good quality one that gave you red eyes, wasn't it?
Mhm.
Was
Yeah.
that the one that killed you?
Yeah, they said he was clinically dead.
Yeah.
You were out. You were
Out for the count for a while.
Yeah.
With
And
without David Baxter from across the road, yeah, I
So
wouldn't be here, I don't think. Although Nan did a very good job at.
I just broke your ribs.
just reefing you back from beyond. Yeah.
So that's
Sorry.
when he went to work full
Trying to
time.
cover that up.
Oh, you're right. That's all.
Full
I'll be
time
able
in
to turn
Joy.
that down.
Yeah, I went to work at Joy,
What is Joy? I remember Joy. I have no idea what Joy is.
mining, coal mining machinery.
Okay.
So all underground machines.
Yep.
The transport out of the mines and all that sort of stuff. Then they bought out a company called Longwall Mining, which is
Harnish Vega.
and Harnish Vega bought them out.
So
So I took a job up at Mackay. They offered me a job in Mackay.
They were flying him around all over to
Rockhampton to fix up their messes.
the office, and they wanted him to go and manage the office at Mackay.
they
So we
figured out you knew how to fix.
he was
issues
going
that-
everywhere. He was going to Curry. He was going, all over where they had mining machinery. They were sending him all over.
Wollongong.
No formal education.
Yeah. So
No
that was
formal.
purely they figured out that you knew what you were doing
Mm.
and got you in all the different places.
Yeah.
He was always
and-
called help desk.
Yeah, I was
That's where
always.
we get that from. Oh, I think on Google.
So in the end, they wanted the guys in Mosfar, which was head office,
Mhm.
ended up telling me, "We don't want you to go. We
For
want you to
12
stay
months,
here."
they were, you're going,
For
you're
12
not
months, I
going,
was
you're going, you're
flying
not going.
up and back.
Okay,
up
so
and
you were
back.
up and back, yeah.
Oh, lots
Because
and lots of times.
I wouldn't have been alive, but
Yeah, you were.
I was. Yeah, so I don't remember you going to Mackay. Like I just didn't realise that you were getting flown around.
Mm.
So
Rockhampton was a lot. Went to Rockhampton a lot of times. Used to go and get and we did the deal with the company. I'd fly up Friday night to the Gold Coast and go and visit Jono because he was living up
that's
there.
right, because that was Bribey Island and stuff,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
and
No.
so
No,
this
no,
was
no,
prior
this
to
is
Bribey.
No,
this is
no, this is
prior
prior-
marriage,
prior to
I
everything.
it.
didn't
This is,
to
realise
his
that
marriage.
he was living up there prior.
oh yeah,
mm,
yeah.
This is all stuff which is like, it's news to me because growing up I felt like it was, you guys lived in the Southern Highlands and that's where you were. And that's like, because it was just, that's when immigrants were. in the
Well,
Southern
Gramps
Highlands.
always did. Gramps was born in the same hospital as you.
Yeah.
So he'd always lived there.
mm.
And that's,
So
but that's like, it was just travelling something like a fly in, fly out job. That sounds,
I'd go
much
up there
more
for a
modest.
week.
yeah,
I'd go up for a week.
yeah, fly out. Like that's
then
it,
come
you
back
fly
down.
fly
in,
back.
Yeah.
go do your stuff, fly back, and that's
Yeah.
he'd go up there and set it up. He'd go to Lithgow and help him set up to run their. What he did in Moss Vale, he went from department to department,
Yeah,
and there was nobody else that knew what he knew, because
Were
most
you like an auditor, or
No.
what
No.
would you call the equivalent of what you were doing in terms of, like, it sounds like management, but at the same time, it very much seems like you got in, you sussed out what the go was, and then you fixed.
Because
got
I
the
think
contract.
because he was
I guess
unique.
I understood what we were trying to achieve. Like
What
I
the
used to
end goal
cost.
was.
I used to cost them the production. So if we got a contract to build a $5 million machine, I would cost that machine from the first nut and bolt that we manufacture,
Yeah.
the labour that takes to
So this
manufacture it, to do all that. But doing that, I got an overall picture of how
What
it all
it's gonna
fits
put
together.
Yeah.
Because he did work in the different areas involved. Where most people came in, they had an expertise in an area, and that's pretty much what they did.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to make sure I've
Yeah.
conceptualised this right. It was making the machinery for the mines. That's what Joy did. And these
Yeah.
different places that you were travelling to were the different manufacturing places for the
Yeah.
different parts of the
Most
machines.
of the other locations were repair shops.
Okay. So they were nearby a
Yeah,
mine
Curry.
that you could...
Yeah.
Curry was another place that had a factory, and they did a few what we call original equipment OE,
Mhm.
but most of it were repairs. And we had a thing called a CEP, which is an exchange program for
Mhm.
parts and motors, and
Okay.
we'd send them out, bring them anyway,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
that sort of stuff.
No, that
But in
makes
the end, they said, no, we want you to stay here and work in a new department called contracts. So when we bought out Honishweg, when we bought out Longwall, it opened up that their manufacturing came into our contracts department. So we managed their contracts.
And the contracts are with the mining companies.
Hmm
Okay. Yeah.
So
yeah.
the last
So
the
you-
last mine that we set up, the total contract was, I think, $54 million.
That
So-
would have been an absolute... What year roughly was that? In the ballpark.
He left Joy Mining to go to Mildura.
It's like the 2010s. No.
2004.
Yeah,
2000,
2004 that would have been. 2003. Well, the
what they were
contract
doing,
would have started probably in 2000. It was a 4-year
and what
contract.
the company was doing, there was a trend.
Yeah.
And they were buying out other companies. They're an offshore company, obviously,
Yeah.
and they were buying out other companies. And as they bought out other companies, they'd bring in their staff, but they would move. They wouldn't give. What's it start with? It starts with an R. What do you call it?
Redundancy.
Redundancy.
Yeah.
They would sort of move the person to the side in a lesser role, lesser pay,
Mm-hmm.
and basically that person would just fizzle out
their
and
job and leave.
absolutely,
And leave.
yeah.
That's a
So
very, yeah.
That's what they were doing, because Gramps' job was so unique.
Couldn't do that to you. Or
They brought in someone and told him he had to train that person,
I trained
So he
3
knew-
bosses.
and and the bosses would then go into big meetings, and they would take all the credit. But Gramps couldn't even get a mobile phone. He couldn't, even though he was supplying all the information and doing all the work.
Cleaning up the mess.
They never ever, because he didn't have a piece of paper behind his name, then he just got treated like a lackey, and the bosses would literally go into meetings claiming it was all their
that's something
knowledge.
which I think has changed a lot, because the way your job worked was you changed jobs a few times, but you were at Joy for 20 plus years.
18 years.
18 years. So, and prior to that, how you were carpooling? No, you were at Blue
Well,
Circle.
most of
Circle.
it,
Well,
most of it.
Why I told the boss at Blue Circle to shove it was for this pretty much the same
Same
reason.
thing.
Yeah, taking the credit.
Yeah,
But that was something which bosses, I feel like, some people get stuck in a job now where bosses still do that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
not to the same extent, because the value of the staff member now, like with staff shortages, it's like that person can very much up and leave. And I feel like that's something we've got now that we didn't used to have.
Yeah.
Your ability to just tell, like, not necessarily tell to shove it, but that person is not loyal to your company. They're loyal to themselves a lot more. Like, it's much more individualistic. But if you start around, I'll take it somewhere else where they can do something. Like, I feel like culture in a company is a big thing now.
It's a storm, darling. It's the wind.
It's just the wind.
They called them H points within the company.
Hay points, yeah.
Hay points. And that was how they decided what you got as a raise or what your position within the company was. It was sort of you were regarded, and Gramps was behind that 8 ball all the time, purely and simply because he had no formal training.
Yeah.
It didn't matter what his performance was. He just didn't have.
He couldn't cross the threshold.
Never.
because of- Yeah,
Never.
yeah, that makes sense. That's like
So-
it sucks, but it makes sense how that system works.
Well,
in
he'd
terms of-
seen it happen. There were, the crazy part of it was that there were people that they were getting rid of that were good workers,
Yeah.
that knew the background of the company.
Mm.
And you need knowledge if it's being used to promote the company,
Yeah.
right? And they're not just sitting there on their backside. But there were people that they really performed well for the company,
They just
and
let
they
them
were
go.
just getting rid of them.
They just let them
And
go.
it was crazy, you know. You
What's
sort
Joy
of
doing these days?
don't know.
They've been bought out
Okay.
by Harnischberger,
Okay.
which is another American company.
But
Yeah.
what happened was Gramps could see the writing on the wall for himself.
I wasn't going to teach another boss.
And the other thing was, for him to get a job of that standing,
Mm.
he was up against people with degrees, and that was the very first cut-off point. I know I'm sort of making a thing about that, but it was an era
No,
of
that's-
time
Yeah.
when you put in your job application for something, one of the very first things that they looked at to narrow the
Qualification.
numbers was your qualification.
Well, I think that still happens.
Yeah,
Because like
they've got to have a point of where they reduce.
yeah, and I feel like job creation and the people were, I say,
Okay, you can't really
less jobs
see
than
in
people,
there.
but the high-paying jobs had enough competition for them that having a degree, regardless of your competence or your skill,
Is
Yeah.
as good as
would
I
give
can
you the edge.
give you.
Like because of the fact that you've got the degree, like
Yeah.
that can still happen now. But I feel like right now
The kitchen's still the same.
you're more taken on your potential worth
Yeah.
rather than
Then,
Well, that was when he got the job at
renovated
at Sunbeam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we left.
and
When we left,
extended.
we went
Something.
Zilzy was
Zilzy.
Yeah.
So when we left Mosfar, we went on the Rose Farm on a 5-year plan, which turned to 17.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
after a couple of years,
1 year.
I had another pretty
Major
ordinary
asthma.
asthma attack, and they said I really shouldn't be out in the dirt and dust.
And on a tractor.
This is
On
the
a tractor.
holding shed.
So the job came up at Zilzy, and I was fortunate enough to get that. Lasted there just short of 7 years.
That's right. You're coming up on long service.
Very short.
2 weeks.
2 weeks off long service. Oh,
Yeah.
was that? Yeah.
So
But it was worth the change from what I understand as well.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
and
So
that's-
while I was at Zilzy, Nan encouraged me to go and see what I could get, whether I
for
could
your
get a cert,
experience.
cert 4 or cert 3, cert 4
Something
in accounting.
recognised on-
So
yeah.
I went through cert 3.
He got
all
so
on
many
RPLs.
RPLs. Yeah.
Yeah.
I went through cert 4, 100% RPLs.
Yeah.
I went through diploma and had to do one unit of law, and the rest were RPLs.
Yeah.
So Zilzy did me a favour. they let me get it. They signed it all off,
Yeah.
all the RPLs,
Right.
which I knew because I'd sort of done a lot of it at
But like
at Joy.
you knew that you knew how to do the stuff, but it's whether or not an employer's going to back you and say that you can do that stuff
Yeah,
as well,
yeah.
which is that's a risk from them and for you. But at the same time, like you miss out on your long service, but they miss out on keeping quality.
Yeah. So went on there to Sunbeam. So I had a bit of paper. It was good. Had a bit of paper and got that job and lasted there over 7 years as management accountant. So that was a big. That was a huge.
high to finish on. It was he
went
deserved
to
it.
I went from
Gramps never had belief in himself.
a 5-figure income to a 6-figure income in First week
You're right.
was great. So, and I loved that job. It was just it was all the experience that I'd had from before. Bills and materials, and like I think my budget was about I think it was 12 when I started, and went up to 15 million for production. So that was my budget. I looked after all the costs of what the shop did. I costed all the parts, costed all the sales that were made. If Aldi rang up and said, you know, we want cherries. All right, what size packet? Liaise with workshop and designers and sales guys, getting it all and putting it together and say, okay, here we go. Tell them it's going to cost them. No, I would say it would cost that. Then they would negotiate a sell price.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So you knew what your minimum baseline was.
I didn't see what they sold it for.
Yeah, but you knew that they knew enough to know what they were going to make on it in actual figures
Yeah.
if they sold it.
Yeah. So, and that's it. Retired from there. Happily retired at Kuta.
You see what?
She's gone to use it, but I didn't realise she'd messaged me. She's just like, I need to use the loo, can you go get me out? And I didn't see it. So she's like, I just left her to cry a couple of times. Sorry for anybody that needs to use the loo.
So that's my bit done, is it?
Well, that's
that part.
That's that part.
What's next?
We
better go to Nan.
We'll get one topic in, and you get to choose basically what the topic is. And we'll only talk on it for a second. But Nan, what did you like occupation wise? I know you had kids, and I know.
No, I did a secretarial course when I left school.
Yep.
Went and got a job at a paint.
Secretarial course. What's
secretarial? You just learned how to type, how to do basic bookkeeping. You did shorthand.
Typewriter.
Yeah, typewriter.
She didn't tell you she was in the naughty class at school.
That was your class, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had headphones and they played music, and because we didn't have we ended up with electric typewriters, but you had to start with the ones with the big keys.
Yeah.
So it'd be like, dun 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 dun.
Oh, so you'd play to the tone,
Yeah.
like what you're hearing through the headphones.
Yeah, you
And
had
was
to
it
type to that.
The keyboards you used to use on a typewriter, I know that they brought in QWERTY keyboards because of people hacking computers. So you didn't type on a QWERTY keyboard, did you? You typed on an A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H all the way across.
Yeah.
So was that weird to see a keyboard that you didn't know how to use? Like when they did bring out, not know how to use, but like...
They jumbled the letters up.
Yeah. Because could you touch type by the time you were doing that, like in terms of typing?
Yeah.
You could touch type.
I could touch type. I don't know that I touch typed. I'd started probably to touch type. I only did TAFE for 6 months, and I got offered this job at the paint place, and they had a retail part, and they had 13 men that were painters.
Okay.
So there was payroll involved. There was a shop I had to run, mix the paint, and do up all their wages, and do the retail side as well.
So you were retail, customer service, and secretarial.
Payroll,
in one.
yeah,
And payroll.
everything, yeah.
So
Yeah,
no
and
HR
that-
back in that day, just payroll.
Then it was all like your little pay slips and all your, down to 1 cent and 2 cents and.
Yeah. Were your pay slips very much like a
was on a
heavily
little
formatted in terms
no,
of
it was
the
on
way
a little envelope, orangey envelope,
Yep.
and on the front it had your breakdown of
So
how many
hours.
tens or how many.
But was there anything regarding, on a payslip now you have to have the business name, the ABN, all that sort of stuff, like in terms of...
No, it was just an
Was there
envelope with their name.
And
You
you've
print
got
you wrote
40
their
hours,
Yeah.
pay that,
Yep.
this much.
So it was pretty much your total, and this is what's in your envelope, isn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Because that was well before electronic banking. in terms of
Oh,
there was
no
no
such
There's
thing.
no
electronic-
computers.
Everything
There
was
was no
manual.
computers, yeah,
Everything
so-
was manual. I had a ledger that I had to write everybody's.
And
stuff.
that was it. That was the equivalent as your ledger.
Yeah, you
That's-
did a ledger.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I had a day book for the money for the shop.
Yeah.
So I did that.
I think that'll confuse a lot of young people
Oh,
if they're listening to this. That's going to confuse young people to say you had to write everything down, and the only record of all of the stuff that you've done is in a book.
Yeah,
And if that book goes up, everything you own goes up.
Goes
there
up.
wasn't like
No, there was
50
no-
copies of that book. Or,
no, no.
no
And you had
backup.
to, you had to balance every
To
day.
the penny
To
or
the
cent.
penny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whatever you had in the till had to balance to your day book of
What's
the
the-
sales that you made.
At 66, you both were born in 52.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So at 66, you're 15. No, 14.
Yeah.
So when was this? 14 wasn't necessarily you. What you both finished school at 16?
Yep.
And then, so you were working in cents like decimal currency when you
Yeah.
went to work. So it was all,
Yep.
The
I can-
pennies weren't.
I can still remember Ken
But there was,
Sheargold coming
there
in
was
with.
a changeover, wasn't there? There was a
Yeah.
changeover period.
How long?
It didn't just go bang.
No, because they do, like it was, you
It-
had a certain amount of time to
So
convert
for a
your
while
currency over,
there was,
Yeah,
you were sort
could
of
still
in
pay
your
with
head
pennies.
you were doing in both.
Yeah. but you were given cents in return.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
kept
Yeah.
pennies
Any
as it
old
got banked.
currency.
It
So
never
it
come
was-
back out of the bank.
But it was only the bank that did that, or was it if you went to the corner store, were they legally allowed to give you
No.
non-decimal currency in return?
No.
No.
No. So that was the legality of if you receive, you can take it and you can cash it at the bank, but
Yeah.
you are not allowed to give change
Yeah.
in
It,
non-decimal
it was
currency.
literally taken out of
So,
Cut out of
circulation.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just more what they've got sitting still at the corner store. They probably would have gone and got
There'd
rid
be
of that
times
They
where
would have
some
swapped
people
it.
would,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, like
Can't
that.
give you that change in
Yeah.
decimal.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
it
but
was just-
Here's a couple of pennies as well, here's a
theoretically it
threepence
was
in
meant to.
So
Was
everybody
it the
in 66 had
16th
to-
of February 1966?
14th of February.
14th, the what?
14th
of February 1960. There was a song.
Yeah, but with that in terms of everybody living in that time that was of age to understand cash needed to understand how to convert
Mhm.
decimal to what was the
And it
previous? But
It
metric?
wasn't-
Imperial.
Imperial to decimal.
Wasn't real
Yeah.
hard.
What was the conversion?
Yeah, but it
rate?
wasn't
Was it
hard
one
for
one?
you.
Mm.
Wasn't hard for you.
But
Where
that's
it was,
hard for average Joe.
where it was very hard
money
was for
for your
people
numbers
that
test.
were older. It
Yeah.
was hard enough for us,
Mm.
but for people
You were
that
young,
were
you were
older,
Flexible.
we
That's like learning a new
still
language.
go pounds. We don't go pounds and shillings.
Sure.
But we still go measurement.
like
Feet
inches and
and
I
stuff.
can
Yeah.
say more 6'2", 6'3", or
Yeah.
it's 3
Can you
foot
convert
wide.
that back to a
Then I've got to think back. It's having a material shop helped me because I measured.
That's something I don't think a lot of people will think of now either, is that an entire generation or multi-generations had to learn how to convert from imperial to decimal or imperial to metric.
Mm.
Like that's
Mm.
that's a skill that it would have been, null and void at the time because everybody knew how to do it. But people don't know, like young kids that we're working with at the moment don't know fractions in terms of when it comes to cooking. We've got them to
right.
cook things like, we need a quarter of a cup.
They don't know what a quarter is.
Well, some of them don't. They can't visualize that a cup is like if I only have a quarter. Sorry, if we need a cup of something and we have a quarter thing or a third thing, that it will take 3 of them. And like that's what I mean. Like that's so basic, and that hasn't changed for so like that fractions are fractions, but the ability to do that isn't a given. Whereas everybody had to do that by default.
Yeah.
Like
hadn't
you
it?
didn't get a choice. If you went in and you didn't know where your change was, you could get shortchanged.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure that would have happened plenty of times. People would have taken advantage
And
of that.
and yeah,
Or it would have been done
Just-
innocently, and the
just
other person
innocently,
didn't
oh.
realise.
Yeah. So, and that's,
See, even things like distance. It was how
they're
many
converting
miles
to
to
kilometres.
kilometres and miles
1.6 yeah, like
miles
it's-
per hour.
yeah.
Yeah.
The speeds.
Well,
You know.
England still hasn't done that.
So
Go to
yeah,
England, they still
we
got miles per
start
hour.
we started with inches and feet and yards and
So we had like when you go
Furlongs and-
back, yeah, we did. We had furlongs and like acres, acres to hectares, and
Yeah.
so in
We still
our
get acres now, I think, to yeah, like it's still like people will talk in acres.
In
now,
acres, still.
But that's more like that just hasn't died because it's too infrequently used until you need to use it. So when you talk about lands, like it's not something you have to use every day.
The
So,
other thing
yeah.
is, it like a baby's birth. They'll
Oh.
say they were 7 pounds. See, I know what our
Yeah,
kids
still
were
in
in pounds,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't know what they were in
Kilos.
kilos.
I didn't know until Mia was born how to convert pounds to well, I still don't necessarily know how to
It's
convert
2.2 pounds to
Yeah.
the kilo.
Mm.
But that's like, it's still like she only weighed 3-point-something kilos, or, you know, like high threes. And it's like, well, she was like 7 pounds 9 or 7 pounds 6, and like we still use that. So
Yeah.
it's really weird.
Yeah, and pints and gallons and
Yeah.
pint
So
of,
like
a
a
pint of milk,
Yeah. Was
Yeah.
that 500 mils a pint?
600 mil.
600.
Well, that's the thing. That's not a pint anymore. Because 500 mil is an imperial pint,
Well, there you go.
which is. But that, if you go and ask for a pint at a pub or something like that,
You
get a
get 500.
500 mil cup. You don't get a 6. Like that's.
Yeah, but it's
still
yeah,
it's
yeah.
been tilted a bit. It's not.
Yeah.
It's being played with.
So I worked at Neville Hearns. What was it called? What was it called?
It wasn't a hern.
Pete. It was Neville Hearns.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, because it was Neville Hearns and Johnny Yelds. They both.
Yeah, yeah.
They
it
both.
was.
That was the worst part. I had 2 bosses.
Oh, okay.
That was the
that's
pit.
nice.
So I worked there. Then Mum and Dad, Grandma and Papa sold the farm and moved to Robertson.
Yes.
The only way I got to work at Mossvale to the paint was that I used to catch the milk truck. My brother did the milk run, so
Okay.
he'd pick up the cans of milk from the farms on the way and bring it into the milk factory in Mossvale. And so I used to catch that truck in to
I mean,
work.
all hours of the morning, wasn't it?
Oh, no, he did it at a certain hour of the morning, but I couldn't get
Alright,
into
sit down.
work.
Sit down, mate.
I had to get the time that I needed to be in at work. I couldn't get in in time. It didn't fit with the school buses or whatever.
Yeah, so there was. Yeah, that
So
was
I could get a bus home in the afternoon, but I didn't. So when they went to Robertson, I worked at. When I was at Robertson, I then worked at Stars News Agency.
News agents. Mm-hmm.
In Mossvale, and then I got a job with an insurance agent in Bowral. So I worked.
Insurance agent.
I worked for an insurance agent in Bowral, and then we got married, and I went to work for Blue Circle Cement in the office.
Yeah, I'm seeing some lining up now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I was pregnant with Jonathan. So I worked there until I had Jono.
Yeah.
And then
nice.
after I had Jonathan,
Was return to work a thing much for like during that age? Like,
No,
like after you
not
have a
so
child, you
much.
basically you're at home now.
it just depended. It depended on whether you had family close by to mind your babies, or if they.
Childcare wasn't exactly
I don't think there was such a thing, was
Well,
there?
Jonathan went to daycare
Preschool.
preschool was more
yeah.
preschool. I did family daycare. I did family daycare. I looked
You
after
took care of
kids.
the kid.
So we did that. Then we moved to Bowral when Jonathan was a baby. Your mum was born in Bowral.
Mm-hmm.
Then we moved to Mittagong, and then I worked a couple of jobs there. I worked as a youth worker with the kids that were taken from their parents, state wards they were called. They don't do that anymore. They took them, and the child was actually was charged with being a state ward.
So,
A ward of the state.
Ward
Yeah.
of the state. Now, being taken from their parents was that the parents were unfit
Yes.
to be their parents. So that's
Yes.
the equivalent of child protection and
Yes.
residential care.
But it was
into-
21 kids.
Yeah.
I worked in a home for 21 boys.
Yeah.
So,
and that was so it was like a boarding house for a bunch of
It was a group home.
But what was the qualifying factor of an unfit parent? in
oh,
terms of
we
what-
had kids
what was
in
the
there
low
that
threshold.
we had kids in there. We're still friends with
Some
with,
of them, yeah.
with one of them, and he and his twin sister. They lived in Deniliquin, and they had an older sister, and they were put out on the lawn with newspaper over them,
Oh yeah, that's pretty rough.
to sleep. They had cigarette burns on them.
That's something
So-
where that sounds like a pretty intense reason. To
Most of
talk
them were.
about So
Most
was
of
there
them.
any so most of them were in that situation where the parents couldn't care for them or
Or
wouldn't care?
didn't care for them.
Yeah.
There
was
were
there many that couldn't care for them in terms of they had 4 kids, they could only take care of 2, so 2 of you are on the street.
Well, being in the position I was in, we weren't encouraged to necessarily read every child's case
Fair enough.
because there was house parents. So what had happened was we had applied to be house
To
parents.
be house parents.
We wanted to be house parents. When we went for the interview, so you
Is
lived.
that like a foster parent?
No, you lived. This was all. It was Renwick. Originally, it was a place called Toombong, and they were truants, kids that didn't go to
Delinquent
school,
sort of kids.
and they had a farm, and they ran the farm in Mittagong, and they went to school. So they all had jobs to do on the farm, but they went to school. Blah blah blah. They ended up building. Some of their homes were absolutely beautiful, big, beautiful brick homes, old-fashioned, big ones. And then they built more modern ones. And ironically, the one that I was at, there was a boys' home called Linden, and there was a girls' home called Waverley on the same parcel of land in the middle of Frensham.
Okay.
So Frensham is one of the
Elite-
most exclusive
elite
girls'
girls'
That's
school.
Yeah, I've heard
Very
of
prime
French.
ministers and all that. Their children went to Frensham. Doug, his daughter's at Frensham,
Yeah, okay.
as in Matt and Doug.
Yeah, Matt and Doug. Oh, like that.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
yeah.
His daughter Maddie is at Frensham.
Yeah, that's,
So-
yeah. So very upper class, very
Extremely.
exclusive. Yeah, okay.
And so you literally
Yeah.
just had a
Yeah,
wire
boys'
fence.
school and a girls' school for not. Well, that was the truants, and that was the.
These kids weren't truants.
These were the taken out of home.
These
yeah,
were the taken out. So you had a girls' home, and then you had the boys' home. Like we could see Waverley from where we were, and then it was like
yeah.
it was like an L for Frensham, and then we were sort of this. We cut out the square in the middle of the L sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah.
And we used to say the only difference between those kids is those parents have got enough money to put their kids in that home.
Yeah.
So a lot of the kids that were in that home were not wanted at home, but they had the money to put them in the Frensham, you know. So yeah, there was 21 boys in the home where I was. One of the other boys that was in that home when I was there, his kids were in the same class as Bianca and Noah. He had 4 kids.
Yeah.
He was pretty much fostered by a local family in that he was friends with one of the boys from high school, and that family befriended him.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Like,
Normally
not
the
necessarily
kids-
like Mark, but a little bit like
different in a
different,
way,
but like
yeah.
it's, yeah.
one of the
Befriended,
things they
not
did is
adopted,
the
yeah.
kids only went there till they were 16. Then once they were 16, that was it.
You're
Sounds
just
ex-
out.
You're out.
This sounds exactly like child protection and residential care, because you hit 16 or 17, you become independent living, is what they call it now. They get assessed for independent living at about 16. I've got one bloke I'm working with at the moment. He's getting assessed for independent living, and he'll still get the Centrelink. So there's a lot more support than
Yeah, financial support and
But
things. Yeah.
that system, at its core, doesn't sound like it's changed very much.
No, well, what they brought in was they allowed them to go on and do 11 and 12 if they wanted to. They could stay at the home. So there were 2 Davids. And they were the only 2 that were allowed. I was 24 when I was a bit older than that, 25, 26. Kelly was just a little thing when I worked there. And when we applied to be house parents, we went in and they said they felt with us having 3 small children that they were concerned as to how we would manage that with the response. Anyway, so what they suggested was that I went in as a youth worker,
Yep.
and I got to find out.
The ins and
what it
outs
was
of how
like.
it runs. Yeah.
So prior to that, I'd worked in a fruit and veggie shop in town. Or did I do that after? It doesn't matter anyway. So these 2 Davids were given the option, and they stayed, and they did year 11 and 12.
Yep.
And so David Manuzek, he's the one who became befriended by this family, because by this stage he's 18, leaving there,
leaving care, yeah.
and they were looking after him. So he went on. He has got a very, very top job in the mines.
Okay.
He has done extremely well,
Yeah.
and he lives in Mittagong.
Oh, it still lives in Mittagong. Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
You'd
Yeah.
think with that, that'd be more like a Perth thing these days with how big the mines are. Over
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
No, he married a local girl, and she worked with Anikel at Barrel High, and their kids went through school. And the other boy, Ray, that used to come, he'd come to our place and have a weekend or stuff like that. And he, we're still friends with him, and his kids are friends with Anikel and stuff.
Okay. Yeah,
So
nice.
it's nice that whole
Yeah,
that
like
whole
you managed to
circle.
keep in touch.
So I worked at a fruit shop in Mittagong. It was too much of an impact with me doing the youth work. I did it for 2 years, but it was weekends, it was nights, it was finishing at 11 at night and be back at 7 the next morning. And
So it was the hours more than the weight of the job?
oh yeah, I loved the job.
Okay, sweet, yeah.
I loved the
that
job.
burns out a lot of people having to work
Yeah,
with
no,
kids.
I
rough
loved the
spots.
job. It was a good job. I enjoyed it. And
Yeah.
and the funny thing was, the two older Davids gave me hell because I was so young, I think, compared to the rest of the staff.
Yeah.
And they, like one night, the junior boys would have supper in the like the lounge room.
Yeah.
And the staff would do that for them.
Yeah.
The senior boys' privilege was they could go to the kitchen, which was all stainless steel, very much a commercial kitchen.
Okay.
They
That's
would
pretty
go
decent.
to the kitchen and they could have their own supper. It was a privilege, so they could lose it, but that was... So it was summertime and they would wear shave coats and have their shorty pyjamas on, because everybody had to have a shower.
Yeah.
You know, It was
Yeah.
all very
But
much
that's
a
one
routine.
Thing, that's one thing that's changed a little bit, is that some of these kids
No
will
shower.
They will refuse a shower, and I mean flat out refuse for weeks. It's
Well, this
the
was
workers
very,
can't do much.
very
Yeah.
regimented. It had to, like the kids came in, I felt terrible. They'd be deloused when they came in, whether they had lice or they didn't have lice.
Yeah.
It was just all this. Anyway,
It's like prison, but
it was in a
regimented.
way.
It's like an army.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very regimented. Anyway, this particular night, I'd not long started and I hadn't done a night shift with taking the supper things back. So when the juniors were finished, you'd take all the plates and whatever cups back into the kitchen and quickly just rinse them, and then the cook would fix them the next morning.
Yeah.
So great big stainless steel table. Well, the boys started to try and put pressure on me, right? So they're going, they started to go, a couple of them go round and round the table and get closer and closer to me, because like say I'm here and the table finished there, and they'd come right out round. Then they pulled their pyjama pants right down, so that it was level with just their shave coat was just over the top. And then they're going, like putting their bum out, and they're going, go on miss, pull his shave coat, go on miss, have a look under his shave coat. And like David Hughes was over 6 foot tall. Like they were grown.
Yeah.
They were like men because they were streetwise as well. They weren't innocent boys, you know.
Was this when they were in year 11 and 12, or was
Yeah.
it still the 10th? So this we're
they
talking
would've-
16 to 18 year olds.
They may have been. No, when I started there, they were in year 10.
Okay,
So they may have been year
15,
10.
16 year olds.
Yeah. So anyway, I finished what I was doing. I was just and then they made some quips, and I believe God only gave me the words because I'm not sharp enough. But I just turned around and said, "Look, boys, you've got nothing. I've married to a man, so I don't need to pull your shave coat back."
Yeah.
And walked out, and like inside I was, that's exactly what I was like. And I thought those,
Just check it.
sure up.
Yep.
I thought those two boys really hated me because they would just constantly put me under pressure, constantly.
Yeah.
And when the time came that I left, David Manuzek, now they had hardly any money. They didn't have families that supported them and stuff,
any
right?
money they had was
Few of them
scratched,
did, but not. And he went down the street and he bought me Crystal d'Arc, which was a good crystal, candlestick makers as a farewell.
Holders, yeah.
Like, I've still got them. I could not believe that this kid, who
That's
I
huge
thought
for-
hated me,
Yeah.
went down and bought this stuff. There was a boy there called Alex Bellissimo.
Yeah.
His parents had a delicatessen in Sydney, right? And he was a truant. He just,
Didn't
because
go-
he wanted to fish. And they,
go fishing.
yeah,
So
And he
any
was-
opportunity, he'd be gone.
he'd be gone. And because their culture is that the kids help,
Mm.
you know, he's Italian, a Bellissimo.
Mm.
And tall, curly hair. He's got his own fishing show on telly.
Oh shit! Serious? Yeah. Well, and that was very much the thing, is that you had to stick to the rules, and that was. It's so hard because these days, like, talking about specifically working with youth, but in residential care, the equivalent of residential care is that now there's a pretty much like a you can't stop them policy, because the amount of times people have gotten in trouble for putting hands on a kid to try and keep them in control, or try and it's restrictive practice and that sort of stuff, and how that's been loosened off. You can't do restrictive practice, basically. There's got to be real reasons as to, you know, why you hide the knives and stuff like that. But that's a big thing. It's restrictive practice basically does. I can see it a little bit, but if I talk loud, it's fine. I'll get little ones, but it'll be loud enough. So restrictive practice is basically out the window. So the young bloke that I work with, he just comes and goes as he pleases.
Mm.
He does, like, he's there. He'll go out for bumper runs, go and collect bumpers off the ground, come back and
Put them
empty
together.
them all out and smoke them. He doesn't like rolling up a cigarette, so he'll smoke them out of something. Then won't go. But there's nothing they can do to stop that, because you can't stop him from leaving. You just basically got to say, make good choices as he walks out, and you just wait for him to get back. So it's a different, like, it's the same system, but it's a different way of operating. There's less control, there's less regimented, and the kids who come out of there, not seen a kid come out of there, I've not heard of either, because I haven't been doing it for that long, come out of there better than what they went in. Now, it's hard to argue whether or not they're better than if they were with their parents. That's a very hard argument to make. But some of them, like this young bloke, he was innocent. And I will say that he was roughly innocent. This is a different young bloke too. He was innocent, but got bullied hard. Nothing that the workers could do. And then the bullies ended up aging out, and then he become the abused bully. He's not very smart, but he's the abused bully, basically. So now it's just like he just runs rampant, and he's got no restrictions, and he's sort of a bit messed up from it. But there's no punitive system in that keeps you in line, that's going to produce someone like David, who's out working top notch in the mines now. The chances that these kids are going to come out in a position where they've got enough discipline to go and move on in life positively, it's basically non-existent.
Well, I met with David probably, 4 or 5 years ago, and had coffee with him. And with him and his wife and Auntie Kelly and I, we met in Mittagong. And we were talking, and one of the house parents, who everybody respected, thought he was just it. He got charged. And David was one of the ones that it happened to. I don't think David was part of the charge. I think an older, a younger generation than David were the ones, but the same thing happened to him.
Yeah.
If children wet the bed, like these were beautiful big old homes, like I said,
Yeah.
with cellars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So if they wet the bed,
Yeah.
middle of winter, he
Yeah.
would sit them, he'd get them out of bed in their wet pyjamas and sit them on the cold steps
Yeah.
that led down to the cellar.
Yeah.
And then he said, though, the house parents, I thought the house parents in Lyndon,
Yeah.
I thought the kids all thought they were great. Right? I just thought they were great. They
Yeah.
seemed to have, she was a drama teacher at the high school, they seemed to have a great rapport with them. When I spoke to David about that, he said, no way. No.
Right.
He said they were too weak. He said the pendulum swung too far. He said it went from what was happening with the Robertses to how Len and Jenny McClay were he said it was way too, we had no boundaries. He said we needed boundaries.
Yeah. Well, and that's the consistency as well.
That's it. Everybody needs boundaries. If we didn't have any boundaries for speed and stuff like that, then there'd be just bedlam on the roads.
Yes.
You know, and that boundary gives you security as well.
Well, and that's the risk reward ratio. Now with what we get, so one of the guys I work with worked in one of these resi cares, and he said the worst thing you could get is a new staff member because they wouldn't know all the rules that are in place, and the young people will manipulate that. And the moment they realise you're the person they can go to get the rules broken, then they will continue to do that. But that's also the issue, is that you have some consistency, you have the boundaries in place. There's some certain things that they know you just say no to, and that's okay to say no to. Like, you don't have to do things you don't want to do. But somebody, even people that have been there for a while, they just took the easy option, which was saying yes in a situation where everybody else is saying no. It's like going to dad to get a yes when mum's already said no, and they would very much do that. But that would undermine the whole situation. And the same idea, they respect the people who will say no. They have a lot more time for them, and they completely disrespect people
That
have.
say yes.
Yeah.
Well, when I first started there, the one bit of advice I was given, and it was great advice, was that what they're going to do is try and push you to break.
Yeah.
Because everybody else has.
Yeah. And
They want to
expect
find
you to
somebody
leave.
who's going to be strong and believe in what they say. That's basically what they said. So
You've told me about that in the past, and
Yeah.
I've used that a lot, especially
Yeah.
with young people, because a lot of the young people I come across are traumatised, and they've got parents that have left and stuff, and it's just like, they will push you to the absolute limit, because one, they want to know where the limit is, they want to know where the boundary is, and if they don't find one, they'll keep pushing until they find one. So you need to set them up early, but at the same time is that they're expecting that they can do something to get you out.
you're going to let them down.
Yeah.
They've been
they
let
just-
down
they,
their whole
they
life.
don't want to go through the waiting for that to happen. They
Yeah.
just, if it's going to happen, let's make it happen
Yeah,
now.
they're going to try and
they'll
make it
definitely do
happen.
that.
Yeah. So I worked there. I worked at the fruit shop. They
Fruit
thought I
shop.
was the sister of the owner,
And then you went to
or I was the
Barrel.
new owner of the fruit shop.
Yeah.
When Uncle John was a baby, so I was only 19, I worked at a place that was formerly an exclusive girls' school that was bought by a Church of England group, set up as a sheltered workshop. So they worked underneath as, or before that I did volunteer work at they were doing work with children that had intellectual disability. There was no school, no facility ever for anything like that. So within the grounds of this place, they gave them what was the tennis court and the old club tennis rooms, which were pretty dilapidated. And so I would go and volunteer there, right? From that I got a job working, and I had 63 women. So it was two big buildings. One had the offices downstairs and some schoolrooms, and upstairs was dormitory. The other one was dormitory. Downstairs was the kitchen, the main hall, and classrooms. So I used to do 11 o'clock at night till 7 in the morning. I was the only person with 63, and I was 19, and I had to do hourly rounds. So I'd have to go, there was a big circular driveway between the two buildings, so I'd have to go across from one building to the other and upstairs, and then go every room, check every room for
Get some of them out of bed.
yeah, they said just some of them will get violent. Some of them be in bed with somebody else. Others would need to get up to go to the toilet. But you're dealing with people with intellectual disability. So, and a lot of them were heavily medicated for their behaviours. And then I had to have all 63 up, dressed, showered by 7 in the morning.
So they reckon working in aged care is hard.
So that was that one.
Then you
What else
went
did I
to
do?
Dairy, is it?
Oh yeah, later on I went to Dairy working with people with intellectual disability. I went back to TAFE when I was 50 and did a Certificate 3 in aged care and worked, there was only 2 of us working the whole of the Southern Highlands, our main office was in Goulburn. There was no office in the Highlands at all. So we had to go around, you know, you
Drive all
either
over the
showered
place.
people or you did a bit of basic housework for them, or you took them shopping or to the doctor or
Where was
whatever.
that? What was the name of the place that had the garden centre?
Oh, Welby Garden Centre.
Welby, yeah.
I went there as a, I worked there. So you'd have a crew that you'd work with, and then you'd have to grade them at the end of the day what they worked. Then I took on the working in the group homes.
Mm-hmm. That wasn't Welby, was it? Or
No,
was
but some of the residents from
that's where
there
you
worked
picked up Trish at.
worked at Welby.
Yeah.
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 And then I went on to the board at Welby. I was one of the board members at Welby Garden Centre. What else did I do? I had a material shop until you were born. I sold it when you were born.
Oh shit! Why
We had the squash courts.
Mm-hmm.
What else have I done?
Well, I remember that you used to make quilts and stuff like that. You used to go to the markets with Mum.
Oh yeah, your
Remember
mum
that
and I
happening?
started doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then what was the next thing? Because you did, that was like, going to those on the weekends, and that was going pretty well. Like, if you'd kept that up, I remember that could have taken off.
We
That was
got
just the-
invited to different things like Tudor House. Tudor House is the leader school to Kings in Sydney.
That's what I was going to say, Tudor House.
Tudor House
yeah.
is very elite, and we
Yeah.
got approached because they saw our work,
Yeah.
and they were having a market at
Mm.
Tudor House, and they asked your mum and I to go there with our work.
That's pretty decent.
It was pretty
Yeah,
decent.
that's pretty
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we did that. I think
Oh.
that's probably. I worked at David's at the Delicatessen,
Oh, yeah.
and I worked across the road. One stage I was doing 3 jobs. I was working at the deli, the Italian restaurant across from that, and I worked at McDonald's at
Mm.
Sutton Forest.
Sasha
'Cause-
works at McDonald's at Sutton Forest.
Does
Oh, no,
she?
she doesn't anymore. She did work at McDonald's at Sutton Forest, so it's like a,
Yeah.
it's not
Most-
a rite of passage, but like it's like a, yeah.
Most times you were doing starts
I was doing 5 a.m. starts.
Mm. Yeah, 24 hours.
at
yeah,
Sutton
that's-
Forest.
Yeah.
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 Sutton Forest is a
From
fair-
Middlegon was a fair old drive every.
I remember going.
yeah.
We had the
Midnight.
Calais, and It was freezing cold. It was like -5, and I got out of the car, like parked the car, and I got out of it, and I'm walking to go into the building, and I could hear this, ooh, 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 ooh. That's coming from our car, and because there was electronic aerials,
Oh, yeah.
and it
you
had
see
ice all the way down, and it
Yeah.
wouldn't let it
Couldn't.
go down.
Yeah.
I had to go and break all the ice off it.
I remember hearing the electronic aerials.
Yeah.
As you turn the car off, you see this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
So
cool.
we thought we were pretty cool, because otherwise you'd have to get out and manually pull them
Yeah.
up. But I think, and then of course we're out there and had the rose garden.
Oh,
See, we
yeah, the
both
rose
had to learn. We knew nothing
Yeah, I was
about
going to
that.
say, you've gone into that with no experience
None
on
whatsoever.
plants and stuff.
And-
Well, you had experience with Welby.
Oh, with Welby Garden
Yeah.
Centre, yeah.
But we didn't have experience with the squash centre either, or with
No,
the
we-
material shop.
We had no. I had $1,200, and I went down to Sydney to a warehouse place, and I just said, I've got $1,200. I want to open a shop. What
Give me
can
some
you give me?"
material.
And they just sent me the
No,
material.
they become good friends too, didn't they? Yeah. they looked after you.
I taught sewing. I had no idea.
You
I-
taught sewing, had no idea.
I
No
taught
idea how to
them-
teach or no idea how to sew.
Well, I it was just self-taught. I had a
I built all the
It's hard to make something
the
explicit when you know how to do it based on your own thing. Like teaching somebody how to do something will make you better
yeah.
at knowing how to do something.
Yeah, I had sewing classes there.
I built
I
all the
made your
bins
mum's-
for the material and the cutting
I made your
table
mum's
and
wedding dress
yeah.
to Darren. I made all the bridesmaids' dresses. I made the vests for the guys. I made your vest.
That's cool.
I made all of them, and then when Darren did what he did and your mum called the wedding off, we gave the dresses. There was only Kelly and Bear. And then they, a year
Goes
later,
back
they
on.
got married.
Mm.
Well, I had to make, then Donna came on board, so I had to make 3 new bridesmaids' dresses.
Yeah.
And then I didn't make Kelly's because she wanted this great big long train, and the lace alone was $400 a metre, and I just said, no, I'm not. You know, the deal that they gave her to make it, it just wasn't worth me. But I made, like, there was Beck, your mum, and
Donna. Or no, Donna. Oh, no, in Kelly's.
What was the third one?
What's the name of Tully? No.
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 How ridiculous is that? There were three of them. But I had to make their... And both of them, both your mum and Kelly, like I had to adapt patterns. I had to put two patterns together to get the result that they wanted, you know. I'd never done anything like that. So I made them.
I think that's the thing as well, is that you've got implicit competence as well in terms of putting that into words. Like you're very highly competent. You've got leadership skills. You've got the ability to do things and figure it out as you go.
We didn't have a choice.
Yeah, that's it.
We didn't have a choice.
It had to be done.
Mm.
We didn't have the money.
We
didn't have the money. We lived at, like, Gramps broke his collarbone, and we didn't have workers' insurance. He worked for himself. We didn't have insurance, and you know, we just at one stage there when Gramps was sick, when before he had the asthma attack, he'd been in hospital with
a tummy bug, I said.
a parasite he ended up having, but he had vomiting and diarrhea, and he was really crook for quite a while, and we had like $180 a month that we had left over.
And that was to buy food, everything.
Yeah, that's how you figured out how to operate, and there was no social welfare.
No, not for that situation.
No, and that's it. Like welfare. What was welfare?
Well, there would have been welfare. I guess we didn't really ask about it, but there would have been welfare. But our situation was we had our own home, we had a car. We would have got very little welfare. Oh, I worked at HarperCollins.
Yeah, you did too. Yeah, HarperCollins,
which is the book company.
Oh, okay.
I worked at HarperCollins in
Is
Mossvale.
that Collins Booksellers?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's like Collins Retail.
There's a big one in Mossvale, a big
distribution
distribution
centre.
centre.
Here there's Collins
Yeah.
Booksellers.
Yeah, HarperCollins
But-
Book Factory.
So that must have been bought out or something, because it's not HarperCollins anymore. It's just Collins.
Okay.
Does that sound right, or like if you?
It could be. It could be.
I don't know.
The factory's still there at Moss Vale.
Collins one name.
No, it's
Harper and Collins sort of thing.
It was always HarperCollins, but I believe it'd be two people.
Yeah, like
But
a law firm. Rather than saying this and this, it'd be like Mahoney Anderson.
It's like Harley Davidson.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like it's
So it was HarperCollins Publishers.
Yeah.
And so it was a distribution centre, so
That wouldn't surprise me
massive.
if it's the same.
It's
yeah.
still there. It's
Yeah.
still there.
If it's still operating and stuff like that, wouldn't surprise me if it's Collins Booksellers, which is a broad company.
Yeah. I worked. There was a lady in Berriman that had 24-hour care. Her family was very, very wealthy,
Oh,
so they
she
had private carers.
Yeah.
So I worked. Do you remember me doing that?
No, I don't remember doing
I was
that.
at Borrowdoo. I used to go there and do shifts. She was a cow of a woman. She was horrible.
Yeah. Wait, the person you were caring for, or the
Yeah.
family? Yeah, the person.
Yeah.
Did she require
was a
care
witch.
because she was like a dementia patient, sort of like?
Oh no, she had physical disabilities.
Oh, okay. So she was just an asshole, and
Yeah,
didn't-
she was.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
like
she
that,
was.
like she was just someone who
She
chose
was
to
just
be
a very rude,
spiteful
very
sort of
rude
person,
lady
yeah.
that had a lot of money.
Yeah.
Had a lot
Yeah.
of money.
Okay. So.
So that's
Yeah, and out at Mildura, you became the with the farmers market
coordinator.
coordinator after being put onto the board and became treasurer and
I can remember going home and telling Gramps the church when we were going out on the lake. I said they've asked me to go on the committee, and he said, "Oh, do they know what they're doing?"
That's like
they know what they're in for.
Both of you, everywhere you go, you get put into positions of authority, and it's not. I don't mean the authority of being the manager and stuff like that. Like recognised competence. that be fair to say? Like, recognise competence among your peers. You get put into a position of
Yes.
recognised
Yes.
competence.
Yeah, I
So
guess.
it's not
I guess.
necessarily,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
not
not-
necessarily paid for what you're doing, but
Yeah.
the peers and the people around you recognise that you're a person that is competent and reliable in an area that you
And
could be
truthfully,
trusted to
some
do
of
something.
those things, it's been because you've had to fight for them.
Mm.
Like as far as the farmers market went with me, I had a lot of opposition for me going into that position. But we had tried to get someone to fill the position, and from either they weren't able genuinely to do it anymore, or that they just didn't want to do it anymore. The thing was, we were sort of, and I knew I could do it. It wasn't a
Well, you got it moved
proudful
from
thing.
over the river to this side of the river, wasn't
Yeah.
it? That was the old big move. So the fact that the farmers market is now on the Mildura side of the river stems from you getting it taken from the Botanic Gardens. And the Botanic Gardens were quite nice, and that was a thing, but getting them moved from the Botanic Gardens to the Sound Shell, essentially,
Yep.
which wasn't
Yep.
the Sound Shell when you moved it down there. At
ornamental
the time.
lakes.
Ornamental Lakes, yeah. So it went from the Ornamental Lakes and moved up to JC Park where it is now. And that's as a result of your involvement.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
That's an
yeah, because there
achievement,
was a lot of
Opposition to moving to this side of the river, and there would have been council requirements.
council were all on our side. When I came over and approached them,
Yeah. Oh, they would have been.
we'll do everything. We'll do this. We'll do that. We'll do something else. Everywhere that I said, well, can we do it here? No, because I wanted to have it originally up at the old homestead, like where Natalie got married.
Yeah, yeah.
Because those grounds would have been perfect up there, you know, and lots of meandering and stuff.
Yeah.
No, you can't have it here. Can we have it here? No.
We
Can we
want
have
it.
it where it is now?
Yeah.
No.
No, can't have that.
That's- yeah.
No way. Not parking. Not not this. Not that. Not something else.
That area has changed a lot as well in terms of the production, like the evolution of the riverfront has changed a bit essentially. But yeah, they would have said no to. So that was the council saying no to everywhere, but saying that they're completely on board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're
Yes,
here to
yeah,
help
no.
you.
Yeah.
But then the minute that we came over, there was nothing. No help.
No help
None.
at all.
Yeah.
None. And
We didn't have anyone to cook the breakfasts.
So I went and approached the Lions Club and asked them would they come on board.
We're still doing the breakfast now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I mean those things were good, but we did it as a team. Everything we've done like that, really and truly, has been
Okay.
a lot
You
of
have to
things
do
have
it as a
been out
team.
of necessity because we had to take whatever we could take.
I think we
You know?
over the years we would have cooked over 100,000 muffins.
Yeah, muffins for the.
Yeah.
Well, you were the muffin lady. That was
Yeah,
what you
people
were.
knew me
well
as the
before-
muffin lady.
Yeah.
Remember
well
I could
before you were running the place.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That was it. You were the muffin lady.
I don't think the people put those two together for a long time either.
Was it? Because it's competence. It's recognised competence, but is it assertiveness? Because I feel like of the two of you, Nan's a bit more assertive than what Gramps is. Gramps is a bit more passive.
Hmm.
You're competent and you're confident in what you do, but I don't feel like you'll talk over the top of people unless it's because they're getting it, Nan. I feel like the moment you're under fire, Gramps will arc up.
Oh
to people.
yeah.
Gramps will back you
Always
up. but I
have
feel
my
like
back,
You're
always.
quite assertive. Yeah.
Gramps has always had, to me when we learnt about the personalities, that just was so, I don't know what you call it. It just made so much sense.
Oh,
that
yeah.
when you know what a person's personality is,
Yeah.
you can work with that personality, not clash against it. And Gramps is phlegmatic. If you ask Gramps, do you want to have a piece of toast? Or
Yeah, sure.
it's like,
maybe.
well, I don't want to answer it. Not right now. I'll tell you later. And
Yeah.
so I'll just say to him, well, there is no later. Right? You want it now or you don't want it. End of story. Or we worked out really early on in our marriage when the kids were little. I wouldn't ask Gramps, what do you reckon about we go down the coast today or whatever? I'd just say, we're going down the coast and we just get stuck in and make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
He loved to do it. It wasn't something, and if he didn't want to do it, he would say so.
Yeah.
But
Well, I
it
think that's a
wasn't
good
me
thing,
speaking
isn't it?
over the top of him.
Yeah.
I just knew if I asked him, it'd take him an hour or two coffees or two beers back then.
Yeah. it just
until he
goes-
made the
Decide.
decision.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
It's
let's
like-
do
But he didn't like he still doesn't like making decisions. He
Okay.
hates
Not
it.
not as quick as Nan wants them.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Oh, that works out.
So it just worked for us, didn't it? Well,
Yeah.
that's enough. It's time to stop.
How long do you reckon we've been going for?
An hour and a half.
No, well, nearly 10 more minutes and we'd be an hour and a half. So
Okay, we'll
we've done
stop.
pretty well though.
We'll stop.
We've got a
9
bit more than
o'clock.
an hour's worth.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty decent though.
Yeah.
You good with that?
Yeah.
So I don't think we're pretty much to the end there, aren't we?
Yeah,
it's
that-
Leaving
it's
the
not
farm.
necessarily up to date, but it's realistically. Well, passing on from there, that's a pretty good. I think more historically, that's what I'm getting at, is that there is stuff that right now I can understand what's happening, but those things that you've had to grow up through, I don't think Mia would ever understand. Like, it just doesn't make sense how you'd have to do the things that you did, because there's no way to conceptualize a world without technology.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's so dystopian to think.
Yeah.
Imagine if you took all the
Just
technology away.
like
How would you live? It's like, this is how we live.
just to have a telephone back then was a big deal,
Yeah.
you know.
So
And
you
the
used to
big
say,
black
boy.
things.
Bzzz, yeah,
Ah.
and then you
And
just
speak to an
wait.
operator.
You
Yeah.
just wait and wait and
That's
wait.
how come we're together.
Bzzz,
That's
and
how
wait
come
for
we're
the
together.
operator.
Why? Because of the operator?
Mm.
That there was one? Or,
Mhm.
Okay, I didn't know if you knew the operator.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
David's wife was an operator.
Okay.
She was a telephonist. That's what they called
Yeah.
it, telephonist.
Yeah.
And then the girl that Grandpa set Gramps up to be
Well,
with,
actually, Ron was going with her,
Helen, he was
Helen,
engaged to
and she was on the
telephonist.
exchange, and her sister Janice, yeah, which was in our class,
She was
or
in our year. In our year. She wasn't
yeah.
in our class.
Yeah, she was
dummy.
in the dumb class.
Yeah.
So you were in the naughty class, which was essentially the smart class.
He was in the
apparently.
smart class.
He was in the smart... You were in the naughty class and he was
No,
in the
no,
smart
no.
class.
I did 4 A's. I did 4 A subjects and two B's.
Okay. Naughty class. So, yeah. No. So you're both in the smart class, which is, yeah. But
Yeah.
it's amazing how much IQ predicts success. Like, you guys you've been successful in each domain that you've set your minds to, that you've decided that you want to do. You've had some level of measurable success.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, and you, obviously, like, effort is a big part of that. Necessity
You
is
do
a big
it.
part of that.
It's got to be done. You've got to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, but you think about the people that it's got to be done. They do it, but they don't do it necessarily as well. They don't do it to
Yeah.
the extent that the
I
people
think
around them.
That comes back to how you're raised. If you're going to do a job, and we've said that to our kids. I believe our kids, all 3 of them, have a very high work ethic. Every single one of them, the jobs that they've done their jobs well. It's reflected in
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Oh no, I would agree with that. Like, they've got enough conscientiousness to do a job to a decent extent. But
Yeah.
the range of people. So what I'm saying in terms of IQ predicting success is that their ability to identify the difference between a good job and a bad job on the cusp, like on the fly. So as you're learning a job, being able to identify at what level is this acceptable and at what level does this exceed expectation. And doing a job which can exceed expectation. You've got Jono and Mandy and Kelly, like, they're all in they know how to do a job to a level that would exceed expectation. Not doing a job to the level that would be acceptable
Yeah.
and get you by.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's more what I mean is
Yeah.
that, like, people can do that, but people don't necessarily have the ability to identify that because they just don't have the intellect to do it.
Yeah.
Like, that's
And I think it comes back to a lot to your training, what you're expected of. Like me growing up on the farm, you in town, you doing your paper run. The expectation on you was you get out of bed and you go and you do your job and you do it well. Whether you want to get out of bed and do it or you don't want to. With us on the farm, the expectation was there's cattle that we're responsible for their welfare, and you don't go and half do a job. Every
Well,
job that we did.
But you can do a job terribly as well. Like, you think about, and this is one I won't claim ownership of this idea, but you could be cook in a kitchen, like a breakfast cook, and you could cook a really, really lousy breakfast, and it would still be cooked, and it would still do the job, and you send it out and it is breakfast, but you could burn the toast, you could fry an egg the wrong way, you just put all of your disgust in the fact that you're stuck in that job, and you just pour all of that on the plate, and you can tell that. And I think that's sort of like, people get upset, but at the same, like, not upset. You can do a lousy job, but still do a job and get the job done. Like with the cattle, it's like you could milk them, but it doesn't mean you have to do a great job of it.
Yeah.
You could do a lousy job and still get by, but you understand enough about your future to know that if I do a better job now, it saves me hassle in the future.
There was no question of there was just never a question that it wasn't done right. The expectation was that you did a job, you did it to your best.
Yeah.
You know, if you couldn't do the job, that's fine. You couldn't do the job.
Yeah.
But if you had to do a job, you had to do it to your best. And we instilled that in our kids.
Yeah.
Gramps'
Do
boss,
it right the first time.
that's what the one good thing when he did the carpet laying, that Noel was that sort of a boss. You don't have to go back and fix. Do it right the first time.
Yeah,
you don't have to go back and fix it.
Oh, you go to Woolies
So-
now. Go to Woolies at like 7 o'clock at night and just stand around there for 5-10 minutes and watch what's happening. And there are people there present for pay.
Yeah, filling in time.
Yeah, and that's very much
Yeah.
So, all right, let's wrap this up because it's
gone too long.
We're going to wrap it up, and then now we're going to wrap it up again, and then if we keep talking, we won't
Yeah.
wrap it up.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
good.
Good.
Sweet.
Good.
All right.
Let's
I
go.
need to press the right button, otherwise I'm going to cancel all that out. So let's just hit this one here.